The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the My Council Services webinar focused on mobile worker. We're just going to step you through some introductory slides initially and more detail on how we'll run the session. So we're going to try and give you an overview through a combination of some background information and a few slides, and then predominantly a live demonstration of some of the primary features and functions of the mobile working areas of My Council Services. There's two of us on the call today. Myself, Bernie Simmons. You'll be hearing mostly from me. I'm facilitating the main content, but I'm also ably assisted and supported by my colleague Rachel. I'll explain more about how Rachel will make sure everything runs smoothly in a moment. I think we'll probably run for about 45 to 50 minutes, maybe a tiny bit longer, so we'll try and get you on your way for the rest of the year after Thursday afternoon by 2 o'clock at the very latest, but hopefully a bit before that. Before we get started, just a few bits of background and housekeeping, as they say. So we are recording the session, so there'll be a recording available after the session's finished. Not immediately afterwards. It takes us a few hours just to kind of get the recording processed and ready for viewing on our website, but we'll send you links for that. You will be able to get hold of a copy of the slides, as you will also be able to access any of the case studies that I might reference in my kind of narrative as we go through the session this afternoon. There'll be a PDF copy of the slides made available to you. If you like what you see this afternoon and you want to see more of it and you want that as a closed session for your council, we can do that. So just get in contact with either me or Rachel and we'll be happy to arrange that for you. And then in terms of asking questions, everyone's lines are muted automatically. Ignore the instruction about having to press *0 to mute your line. You don't need to do that. We've got the ability to mute lines centrally from our side of the webinar. The reason that we do that is we've got about 10 or 15 people on the call this afternoon from different councils. And some of you are obviously operating in open plan offices and so on and so forth, and you can get a bit of background noise. So we mute everyone's line so that we don't get that distraction of the background noise, and also so that you can relax and have a cup of tea while you're watching the content and hopefully enjoying it and finding it interesting. What that does present, though, is a slightly different way of working in terms of asking questions. So there is a chat facility on the control console for GoToMeeting, which is the service that we use to run these webinars. If you could use the chat facility to ask any questions that occur to you, and do feel free to do that. And that's where Rachel really comes into her own, because it would be Rachel that takes those questions and answers them and responds to them in the background whilst I'm running the webinar, or actually kind of concentrating on delivering the content. If I was to try and do that, I would fail miserably because I can't multitask. I can't do the presentation and respond to questions at the same time. So Rachel and I divide that labour up. So Rachel will take questions. If you can ask your questions via the chat facility to Rachel, that's how we'll do that, and that allows me to get on with my bit then. If we've got questions that we can't answer today, then we'll follow up with you. If they're more involved or require a one-to-one conversation, then we'll just set that up. But do feel free to ask. We encourage you to engage with us, but we just ask that you do that via the chat facility. So that's the housekeeping. In terms of background, we'll provide a bit of background to some of the common challenges in local government, background to My Council Services and how it fits together more as an end-to-end digital platform rather than just focusing on the mobile worker piece for the introductory piece, although we will increasingly zone in on the mobile worker aspects. Just a quick courtesy comment at that point. I know there are a few people on the session this afternoon that also attended the session this morning. You will see some overlapping content around the introductory piece, so I apologise for that, but it's there for the benefit of those that are just joining this afternoon session. For those of you that are just joining the afternoon session, we did run a session this morning on our customer digital access and customer self-service and My Account portal capabilities, but we stopped that short of the mobile working piece, so we're going to be linking those two things together in the next 40 minutes or so. I'll talk a bit about local authorities using the platform, and then we will provide you with a demonstration and Q&A as I described throughout with the chat facility, if you don't mind, please. Thank you. So that's the structure. To get on with the job in hand, and again, I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because it's worth sharing, because it's common background and understanding to what some of the challenges are, but it's also pretty well understood, I think, by most folks on the call. So it's probably not new to you. The story is, in case you missed it, is that public service is under significant pressure, and I would argue that local authorities are right at the front edge of the kind of leading edge of that pressure. in terms of having to respond to it because of a significant and ongoing prevailing conditions of budget shrinkage under the kind of the prevailing conditions of austerity and tightness on budgetary control and funding for local authorities. That's a real challenge. Alongside that, you're being challenged to save not only cash but also to do the same, or at least, or potentially more, with less people and less resources, so saving on people and assets as well. And then add to that into the mix the expectations that we all have as individual citizens and residents of our local authorities and customers of our own local authorities on our non-professional capacities, that we expect good service and quality service through multiple channels. So add those three things together: the need to save cash, the need to save resources, both people and assets, and often the requirement to divest assets as part of that. And on the other side of that equation, customers expecting the same or better service through the channel of their choice. And you've got quite a significant set of challenges as a complex service delivery organisation. I think it is fair to describe local authorities as complex enterprises and complex organisations. You've got lots of services that you have to deliver and want to deliver to a broad range of people. You need to communicate with them in different ways. They've got different and diverse needs. So it's a very complex set of challenges in terms of achieving good quality service delivery in the current operating environment. So how has local government been responding? Again, I'm going to move pretty quickly through this piece, and this is an observational of narrative from our viewers that's got an agenda behind it, but we've seen a shift in recent times of the way local authorities are organising themselves, partly in response to the kind of the challenges that we talked about a few minutes ago. But historically, if you think about a local authority, it's tended to be set up in fairly kind of discrete silos. So you'll have a service area that deals with and is exclusively focused on environmental service. You'll probably almost certainly have one that is dealing with social care. You'll have another area that's interested in the delivery of and delivery of benefits, collection of revenues. If you're a unitary authority or a shire authority, you'll have highways, you might have children's services in that same context, and a whole bunch of other service-specific functions. In the recent past, it's been common for those individual functional silos to have their own, often very effective administration function, but an administration function that's housed within the service-specific area, and underneath that, from an IT perspective, a whole range of line of business systems that support the specific activities of environmental services or social care, whatever it might be. Now that presents some significant challenges because at each layer of activity within those specific siloed service areas, you've got some level of duplication, either across administration and often across like different line of business systems, or at least lots of different business systems. So that is a model that is increasingly difficult to maintain given the challenges that we've just been talking about. It leads to fragmentation of data, it leads to duplication of administration processes and customer-facing processes, it leads to high cost of ownership from an IT point of view because you've got a broader state of systems to support. So overall, it's potentially costing you money. Hence, it's been under very close scrutiny over the last 5, 6, 7 years. What it does deliver, though, and again, this narrative is in no way meant to be critical, what that silo, kind of very service-focused approach has delivered historically is very deep process expertise and specialised processes that are fit for purpose within that functional area, and you don't necessarily want to lose that. So how do you kind of change and make yourself more cost-effective and more efficient, without undoing and diluting the efficacy and quality of the services that you deliver? So to that end, what we've seen emerge, certainly over the last 3 to 4+ years, I would say, probably a bit longer than that, maybe 5 or 6 years now, is a more contemporary kind of enterprise approach to how local authorities are organising themselves. I also hasten to add at this point, this has got very little to do with the delivery of technology at this stage. We'll kind of get on to where that fits in a minute, and specifically where what we provide fits in. But if you think about a contemporary UK local authority organisation, and I'll pause at that point and just comment that we have built our organisation, our business, exclusively working with local authorities. So we can empathise because, albeit through a separate lens and a slightly different lens, we do see the same challenges because our customers are local authorities. We don't work anywhere else. But what we've seen develop over the last 5+ years is the emergence of a pan-organisational customer services function, working often very closely with IT in terms of the transformation agenda. But that's not necessarily a group of customer services folks that are all in the same place or in the same building, but then often knitted together and enabled with a common set of technologies that enable them to talk to customers, and they front all of the service areas that continue to do great work around actually delivering the frontline services that are required of a local authority that are expected by your customers. So what you've got sitting behind that emergent enterprise admin support resource, customer services, call it what you will, is you've got probably a slimmed down set of service specific functions, so akin to the silo structure: environmental services, social care, revs and bends, highway children's services, whatever it might be. Regulatory services, you can name and list a bunch of them. So you've got those slimmed down service areas sitting alongside and behind that increasingly cohesive and coordinated, if not physically centralized, customer services function. You've then got IT in the background and involved in all of these processes in some way, because they're delivering the technology and the automation and the infrastructure to enable you to do your day jobs on the frontline service delivery. And what IT leadership has been challenged with is to increasingly consolidate the systems and data architecture. So can we deliver the same level of quality and the same level of improved levels of automation, improved quality, but by spending less cash, because we're dealing with less systems and less vendors, and our systems are able to do more, so we can wring more value out of them. So there's a multi-layered kind of organizational and technology challenge that sits behind any successful transformation program. There are ups and downsides to this shift. I think the obvious downside is that historically, when times have been tight and maybe the economy has been slow and tax receipts have been low, government has turned to its local government partners and said, look, we need you to save 5% or 8%, and you've done that by salami slicing in different areas. What's happened with the kind of ongoing, I suppose, austerity agenda, if you will, is that actually what senior leadership are being challenged to do in local authorities today is not to deliver salami slicing type cost reductions. They are being forced to deliver and realise, arguably life-changing and service-changing savings. So they're being challenged year on year to save maybe 10, 15, 20% of operating budget, and that is not an easy challenge to face without having the fortitude to think radically about how you're organised, hence the shift in operating model that we've seen emerge across the UK local authority sector. So that's the challenge. Now, the upside of that piece is that you do, if you can get through this kind of continuum of change and evolution to a more streamlined organisation and a more contemporary organisational structure, you do tend to see more unified support processes for customers, more accessible support processes for customers. You still get access to those specialised skills as required, so that you can go out and deliver effective social care directly or through commissioned partners. Perhaps social care isn't a very good example in the current political climate. Maybe let's take environmental services or highways or whatever it might be. And over time, you should deliver a more unified data and IT infrastructure, and crucially, do all of that with a lower cost of ownership. So that's what we've seen emerging. We've seen a technology drive to automation and end-to-end digital services, and digital by default through channel shift and transformation programs. But enabling and underpinning all of that, what we've also seen, and what has to accompany it really, is a significant organisational shift. So that's some of the background. One of the reasons for sharing that with you at this stage is it enables me to broaden out the range of services and, I suppose, technology capabilities that we offer. And I'll talk about those in the round, and then we'll zero in on the specific mobile working piece this morning. So if you were on our session this morning, you would have seen the same diagram, and we talked about and spent a lot of time looking at our kind of customer self-service capability, which leads to some of the back office capability, so CRM and service desk tools, and we also looked at and demonstrated some of the line of business type processes and systems. So the ability to set up self-service processes, to do mediated processes, to integrate those with other applications and areas and payment processes in the organisation. What we're going to focus on this afternoon are the sections on the bottom half of this schematic, which is the mobile working capability, and to a lesser extent the kind of integration, but to a greater extent the automation capability. So just to put that into context, as an example, if a customer, a resident of your local authority, raises a service request in the morning on their smartphone device or on their tablet, then the mobile working piece really covers the, say, well, we allow a customer to raise a service request, but how do we get that out into the hands of somebody that really is not just a mobile worker but a remote worker? So they might be out on foot in the borough, or they might be in a van or a vehicle with an intermittent connection to the council network and the council back office tool. But how do we enable them to work off a digital task and service request capability on a device that negates the need for them to travel back to depot every 2 or 3 hours to collect more work and the inevitable interruption to productivity that brings, and how at the same time do we keep them safe, do we understand where they're at, and crucially not forgetting that in the middle of all these processes that we've probably got a customer that's quite keen, interested to know how you're getting on dealing with their particular service request, be that a flight tip, be it a payment and booking request for the removal of a bulky item, be it a request for a visit at the home, for a mobility needs assessment, or whatever it might be. You can think of the sorts of processes that you would enable, but it's how do you get an efficient and appropriately automated process from point of submission by a customer of a service request and a request to the organisation for service to putting that in the hands of someone that can deal with it. And that's what we're going to deal with over the next half hour or so in this session. To do that, I'm going to move very rapidly through the next few slides, and I'm going to slow down a little bit to look more specifically at the mobile working capability that we offer and what I'm going to share with you from a demo point of view this afternoon. But I just want to kind of explode out and expand out on the capabilities that we offer in the round first, but I am going to do that quite quickly. So if I just shove that diagram to one side, I'll recap very quickly some of the other areas that we offer. We offer a comprehensive customer self-service capability and My Account enterprise capability. So if you want to allow customers to do stuff themselves, we've got technology that enables that, and you can make that as sophisticated and as multi-layered as you wish. We offer a whole bunch of back-office tools which I'll touch on as part of this session, but only briefly. We enable our customers, UK local authorities, to enable any range of processes digitally and to deploy those digitally right through from customer self-service all the way through to mobile working. And you can see on screen the different types of processes that you might want to run, so the ability to configure and deploy those as required. We recognise that we're not going to be the only service and system provider into a local authority. You've got a mixed economy and a complex economy often of different IT and back office systems that you're using. So our undertaking to our UK local authority customers is that we will make it as easy as possible and as financially sustainable as possible to integrate into and with and play nicely with and exchange data securely with whichever back office and alternate systems you might be using alongside our own. That's our general kind of position and principle around implementing mobile working and other aspects of our technology for our UK local authority customers. So integration and openness of stance there is important. In terms of the mobile working functionality in particular, and I'll pause for a little bit more time on these particular sections, we offer a full offline and online mobile working capability that enables your colleagues that might be remote out in your district, borough, unitary area, shire area to get on with their jobs and do large swathes of that activity from a handheld device, be that a tablet, be that a smartphone, be that on Windows, be that on Android, or be that an Apple device. So we enable that through a suite of what we call native mobile application technology, a small piece of software that's installed on the device, holds data and task information encrypted on the device, and the way that a user can access that can vary based on their profile. So there may be someone that's in a supervisory capacity, and that would equate to someone like a mobile manager or someone using mobile manager, so maybe a team leader or a supervisor on a team that's working remotely on delivery of services. So that's mobile manager, and I'll touch on that in a moment. That may be someone that is a member of that team that needs to pick up tasks and service requests that have been assigned to them and manage those regardless of whether they've got connectivity and signal, but to be able to update them, update the metadata, take photographs, fill in a form, complete a digital process on the device. That would be something like mobile worker. It might be something that is a highly repetitive but nonetheless important task that you want specific specialised workers to be able to do, and that would be something like Mobile Worker Express. I talked also in the mobile working capability about lone worker safety and the ability to exercise your duty of care to those that are working away from a safe and secure office environment and that may be dealing with customers that are potentially unpredictable or going into locations that require them to be monitored in some way. And for that sort of capability we offer our lone worker functionality, and we offer our workforce management and workforce tracking functionality. So there's quite a bit of breadth and depth to the mobile worker context. I hope that kind of helps define what we're going to cover off this afternoon, and kind of gives you a bit of a sense for what it is we offer. I think it's also worthy of comment to say that at the other end of the stack, things like customer service staff working remotely could also be considered mobile working in that sense, and we can enable that non-office based working, browser-based access to back-office systems and so on through our own platform. But for the purposes of this session this afternoon, we're going to be focusing on those, what we would call truly remote workers that have not got, the benefit of a permanently on wireless connection, from a remote office or their home or whatever it might be. So, on that note, I'll just pop up on screen a summary, a sample of some of our current customers. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing a copy of these slides with you. They'll be available for download once we're finished with the session this afternoon and once we've had the chance to make them available on the site, on our website. So no need to scribble these down, but there's a sample of some of our customers, and you'll see that it's really kind of spans the range from relatively small district and borough authorities through metropolitan authorities up to large unitaries. So we really kind of work up and down the stack, enabling both customer self-service, channel shift for customers, mobile working, a whole range of different sets of capabilities, and pretty much everything in between. So what we're providing is an end-to-end digital process platform. In terms of where you choose to use that, if that's indeed what you want to do, you can exit that at any point. So you can start with customer self-service, you can start with mobile working, and so on and so forth. Apologies for the interruption. I am going to share my iPhone screen with you as part of the demonstration a little bit, so it means I need to leave my iPhone switched on. The risk of that is people call me, as you may have just heard in the background, or people continue to call me, I should say. So there's a sample of some of our customers. What we'll do at this stage is I'll jump out of the slides and I'll start to give you a bit of a walkthrough and demonstration of some of the capabilities. So bear with me a second while I organise that. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to put up a couple of things. I'm going to minimize the slides, get rid of those, and I'm going to take you across to a customer portal, which some of you may have seen this morning, and I'm also going to bring up my iPhone screen. He said, hopefully. There we go. So you're seeing a couple of things on screen at the minute. You should be. On the left-hand side, you're looking at my iPhone screen, and I've dropped into a directory called Council Apps, Council Applications, and you can see some examples of some of our customers. So branded native mobile applications from Wiltshire, Torvine, Belfast, New Forest, Winchester, Bournemouth, Doncaster. I don't need to read them all back to you. You can go and download these from the App Store and test them out yourselves. The reason for certainly for bringing up the app piece first off is so that I can share with you some of the native mobile application technology, some of the functionality that offers. So if I click on the My Council Services demo app in the bottom right-hand corner, the pale blue with the three little Cluedo-like figures on the icon, and drop into that, what this is really kind of the equivalent of a customer portal or an internal council officer portal, but embodied in and made manifest in a native mobile application. The benefit of the native mobile application is it's a secure piece of software running on the device, so in this case running on my iPhone 7. But what it does is, if I just tap on user details for a moment, it recognises the user. So I'm logged in here as bernie@abavus.co.uk under my own password and username, and that's given me what you might describe as a kind of trusted user priority. So there's a role-based profile attached to my user profile, and that role-based profile gives me access to a different range of functionality that someone that hasn't got the same set of privileges as me. So a customer could use the same app, but they would only see report it and some forms and bits and pieces. Because I'm logged in as a trusted user, I can see things like Mobile Manager, I can see Mobile Worker, I can see Lone Worker, I can see Express Worker, amongst all the other rich content that exists on the native mobile application. So the native mobile application piece is quite important from a mobile working point of view, because it's the native mobile piece that enables the true offline working capability. So if I am, let's say, I'm an environmental health officer, and I'm equipped with a native mobile application on my tablet device or my smartphone device, and on that I have a whole range of scheduled tasks and food safety inspections that I'm going about the borough completing on behalf of my employer, the council. If I was doing that, I could go into my inspections example on the Native Mobile application here and complete those scheduled inspections. The other thing I might also do is I might actually, in terms of going about my business and fulfilling my roles and responsibilities of my job, I might notice other issues that I think it's important for the council, my colleagues at the council, to be aware of. And if that's the case, then I can tap on Report It, and I can access a whole range of different forms through which I can alert my colleagues at the council of other things that we might need to deal with. So it might be that as an environmental health officer, I'm going from one restaurant to another, and as I'm doing so, I go past an empty property that looks like it's got signs of unauthorised occupation, for example. So I might want to alert my colleagues in environmental services or housing management about that particular issue, particularly if it's one of the properties that we manage, for example. So I might say, well, on empty properties, I'm going to raise a service request. So I'm going to put some detail in there that I think is relevant. I'll say signs of illegal occupancy, and maybe there's some signs of damage, so we might say and vandalism. And you'll see I'm using all the on-app capabilities to do this. So we'll create that, click on next. So then we're dealing with a physical object somewhere. So we may well want to take a photograph of the incident. So I can tap on that, and I could at that point take a photograph with my camera like so. So you're looking at my screen. Or I might want to keep things a bit more realistic. So we'll select a photograph from my library. And I've got some empty property examples here, I think. That one will do. We'll select that photograph. Click on next. It's a place-based issue, so I want to identify it and pin it to the planet somewhere. So I'm going to use the map to identify the location. That's using the on-device capability to pinpoint me. You'll see that I'm working from a particular location. I don't expect anyone will guess where Saxton Nethergate is, but feel free to Google it. But I'm working from my home office location there today. But I'm going to override that and give it a different address. I'm going to say I'm going to give it a different postcode. I'm going to give it a North East London postcode, because that will force it into a particular back office environment based on its location that gives me access to it, so I can demo the kind of downstream workflow effectively. So I'm going to find that location. That will reposition me back in Redbridge in North East London. And you'll notice at the bottom of the screen what it's actually doing is mapping to a particular address. Actually what it's doing in real time is pinging back against the local land and property gazetteer on our platform, actually the National Land and Property Gazetteer on our platform, and matching that up with a verified address in this case. You can, if you're out in the rural wild somewhere, you can do exactly the same location. It will just pick up a grid reference rather than an address, so it doesn't have to be address matched, but it is in this example. We'll click on done because we're happy with that. That's the right address. We'll give it an incident date, and we'll give it a particular priority. So that's of medium importance. The questions that I'm asking and the order in which I'm asking and completing those questions is entirely at the discretion of the council using and deploying the platform. There's a full forms design capability on platform. So the questions that I've got for this empty properties example is just a sample. So don't feel that or imagine that you've got to run it that way. You can answer any sort of questions, any range of questions that you want. Anyway, we've completed the form. We'll click on submit, and then what the application will do is bundle that information up and push it off to the appropriate authority. So although we're out in actually South Norfolk today, that's where I'm based right at this minute, I've given it a different location, and the service and the application in combination have said, well, actually we know who Bernie is, we know where he is today because we've used the GPS capabilities on his device, but actually the location of this particular empty property that he's given us actually belongs to Redbridge Borough Council. So it's pushing it through using some automated geographic intelligence to push that through to the appropriate authority. And that goes for whether you're a council worker or whether you're a customer or whoever you may be, or a visitor to the borough, or whatever the case happens to be. So what we've done there is to complete a simple service request process as a functioning and operating council officer out in the borough somewhere. We've done that from a native mobile application. So the same is also true from a customer doing that, and we'll just spend a couple of minutes doing that automatically. So I'm logged in on the portal side as a customer in this example. So anyone that's seen any of these webinars before will recognise my friend my fictional friend Gary Wilcox, but we're going to use Gary's example again. I'm logged into a customer portal. We're going to drop into a set of report it forms, and I'm just going to very quickly go through and create a quick fly tip request using the fly tip form. So is it blocking a road or pathway? We'll say yes it is. I'm going to say I had to step into the road to pass. Is it on public or private property? We'll say it's on public. You could check that based on the location and verify for sure. We didn't see who submitted it. We'll say that as general rubbish has been dumped. Click on next. We then get an opportunity from the browser to add files to that. So add evidence to that, I should say. So we'll pick a suitable photograph. We'll upload that. Click on next. We're then in the same process capturing the location, so we'll get it to search where we're at. I'll give it a different postcode this time. I'll give it IG12NY. That's another Redbridge-based postcode. It, again, is doing the matching against the National Land and Property Gazetteer. We'll give it a location. We'll give it a date. Again, these are just sample forms. You don't have to design forms this way if you don't like the look of these particular forms or the questions that are being asked. Click on next, get a confirmation of that, and then we can submit. So we've done two processes there. One as a council officer logged in on a remote device, creating the first service request under the empty properties category, and then we've done the same thing from a customer's perspective, just raising a service request. Now I wanted to do those two things. One is to demonstrate the point about the ability for a council officer to raise service requests not just in their own service area, but for their colleagues to respond and deal with. And then, of course, I wanted to create some data from a customer's point of view. So the next question that raises is, well, where does all that data go that the customer and my colleagues in the council have created? And where that goes first off is to our UK-hosted, cloud-based secure database as part of the digital platform that we position as My Council Services. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a step into the back office environment of My Council Services. I'm going to log in as a council officer. So I'm going to stop talking while I try and remember usernames and passwords. So I'll log into the back office environment, and what we're looking at there now on screen is what we call our service desk interface. So again, this is a browser-based, zero client footprint, so there's nothing installed on the local PC. It's entirely browser-based. You could access this interface from a tablet or from a PC device, or arguably from a smartphone device. So again, it's entirely agile and flexible in the way that people can access it, and therefore it could be considered part of a mobile working capability in the broader context. But as we log into Service Desk, what we see is those two service requests that we've just created, one at 13:30 today and one at 13:32, now exist in the My Council Services database. There's an important kind of point of process there, is that once those details have been submitted and are held in the database, if integration exists with any other third-party applications in your organisation, so be that iDocs or a Revs and Ben system or whatever it might be, we can integrate into those systems and securely exchange data with those systems and dynamically. So that's both sending data to them to allow them to do their thing, and then potentially receiving data back from them to maybe pass out to a mobile worker. The other alternative with that is you can manage all of that automated workflow from within My Council Services. So we have a significant capability to configure all sorts of automated work streams and workflows on our own platform, which may give you the option potentially, if you wanted to, of replacing some of those back office systems. That's not a stated aim and objective from our point of view necessarily, but if that's something that you're looking to do from an IT perspective to consolidate down the range of systems that you have, there's an awful lot of workflow and processing that can be achieved on the My Council Services platform that will be equivalent to perhaps some of the other systems that you're using currently. So, on the service desk screen, what we've got is the fly tip example that we created under Gary's profile. So that was created by our pretend customer, Gary Wilcox. There's a couple of other things that have happened here as well. There's a bit of automated workflow that's already kicked in on this particular example. The first thing that you can see is that the time is now 13:36. That was created a few minutes ago at 13:32, and what we've done in the service column is applied an automated general service level request criteria to that particular issue. So what we've said, it's not a particularly realistic example, it's just for the purposes of this demonstration, is to say that our goal is to respond to a customer within 30 minutes of receiving a service request from the request for a certain. You can configure those service levels for different types of service in different ways. You may choose not to apply an SLA to something, but if you want to, that's there. And what the SLA gives you is the ability to have another layer of data around the service request against which you can trigger and automate processes. So if you breach that service level, you can automatically trigger an escalation procedure or a notification procedure back to the customer or back to stakeholders internally. So it just gives you another set of options. It's not mandated to use it, but it just gives you another set of options. It was created at 13:32 today. We're counting down on that service level request. The other thing that's happened automatically here is that the owner has changed. So it was submitted by Gary Wilcox, but the person responsible for it in the council now, the owner, is me. It's been automatically assigned to me. So that's quite interesting, because what that tells us is that there's an automated rule kicking in the background that says if a service request meets these certain types of criteria, then do these certain types of downstream activities with it. So in this context, what it's actually saying, it's quite a simple rule, is it's saying if fly tip, then automatically assigned to Bernie Simmons. That's a very, very simplistic rule, but we've got examples of other customers. Maidstone Borough Council springs to mind. They're using our mobile working platform for their street SIEM and environmental services areas, and they've got a set of geographical based assignment rules. So they've got a unique set of geographies within the borough that allocate place-based services, in street scene type services, based on the depot and the depot's catchment area. So in that example, for Maidstone, they have an automated rule that says, you know, if it's within this grid reference or within this area, and they ping it against the specific geographical layer that's loaded into our platform, then assign it to depot A or depot B or depot C. So there's some quite sophisticated ways that you can get those automated rules to work. You may also choose to say that actually we want to assign it to a particular worker based on whoever's closest to it, based on the number of open service requests or tasks that they've got on their current digital task sheet. So you can have multi-layered automated assignment rules around the allocation of both service requests, tasks and cases, any data that happens to get created. So that's quite a long-winded description of all of the data that's available in that service desk screen. If I drop back into that particular service request by clicking on the service request number that's been assigned to it, I get into another level of detail. So I can see from here that I've got detail about when it was submitted. I've got all of the questions and answers that the customer submitted. I've got all of the customer information, so I can see that it was Gary and his address and when it was done and via which channel and so on and so forth, how many reports he's submitted previously. I can see the photograph that Gary added. I can see the specific location of it in Roman Road with its full grid reference and UPRN number if I need that. And I can see that this automated rule has kicked in here and assigned it back out to me as a mobile worker. So it's assigned it back out to bernie@adverse.co.uk. What it's also done is to create an automated task or work order in this example that's been assigned out to one of my colleagues. So mobile.workertest@itv.com. In the background, in case anyone is concerned about what's happening automated and what's happening in a non-automated way, in a manual way, is we build up a service request history and a full audit trail of everything that's been done. So from the point of submission by Gary against his email address, because he was logged in as an identified customer, and the time and date, right through actually to the automated updating of the owner, so the assignment of it to me by FlyTip auto assign rule, and then the auto task creation rule that assigned it out to a particular mobile worker. In this example, we've rigged it up to assign it out to a fictional BIFA employee, so a commissioned third party. So these are automation and assignment rules can relate to and affect the workload for internal colleagues and officers, and also commissioned third-party employees. So it can be very flexible and kind of span the borders in terms of process in that regard. So we build up a full picture of exactly what's happened to this service request at any given point in time. So at that point, what I'm going to do is reintroduce my iPhone screen and show you how some of these kind of automated rules work, or how they manifest themselves, I should say. I'll just wait for my iPhone screen to pop back up. There it is. And we'll unlock the screen. drop back into My Council Services, and what I'm going to do at this point is I'm logged in under my own profile, so I'll just pause and we'll remind ourselves of what we've been doing. One of those service requests that we created, the fly tip request that Gary created as a customer, that was subject to a set of auto assign rules to assign that task back out to me, or to that service request back out to me. Because I've got Mobile Worker on my device, I can click on the Mobile Worker icon, I can swipe down the screen or just wait for it to automatically refresh, and as long as I've got some form of connectivity, so a 3G signal or better, what it will do is it will go and knock on the door of the My Council Services database and say, hi, this is Bernie Simmons, and a mobile worker with these privileges and these capabilities and this accessibility. Have you got anything that should be assigned automatically out to Bernie? The automation engine has automatically done that processing in the background, and what you'll have seen while I was talking is that fly tip request at 5 Roman Road in Ilford, IG12NY, has now dropped down onto my mobile device. Once it's on my mobile device, I can drop back into it and I can see all of the detail and data around that particular service request. And no longer do I need a signal to be able to work with this data. So once I've been able to download that particular service request to my device, I can work with it to my heart's content inside the proverbial lead dustbin or in the proverbial tunnel without any signal whatsoever. So that gives you that full offline working capability. From a security point of view, because I'm logged in as an authenticated and trusted user, I can see that data, but that data is actually held encrypted on the device. So if it was lost or stolen and someone didn't have access to the device and access to the application, they wouldn't be able to see that data. I can tap on the image and I can see that, and I can pinch and zoom with so I know what I'm dealing with. I can see all of the data around that particular service request. What I can also do from here, if I click on the topmost kind of triple layered icon in the top right hand corner, if I tap on that, I've got a whole bunch of options that allow me to work with my service requests in different ways. So I can get a list view of them as I'm looking at them in it. I can have them as a map view. I can have them as a calendar view. If I'm in a vehicle and I'm going to drive from A to B to C and I want them in the optimized driving route, I can select auto route. It will automatically put, based on my current location, put them in order of sensible driving order, so that I go to the nearest and then the next nearest and so on and so forth, so a kind of semi-optimized route. I can pick work, reject work, and all of these options can be configured and changed for the individual worker, so you can control how much governance an individual worker might have. So that gives me the ability to look at service requests on the device locally and to work with those and to update the data and so on and so forth. I can also look at particular tasks and cases, so I might want to see if there's been any tasks that have been assigned to me. So there's two types of data that are going on there. There's the service request and then the tasks that sit underneath it. So that gives me a sense of what's going on from a mobile worker point of view and the ability to automate allocated work out to your team, out to your crew, so that they can get on and they can deal with it and manage it accordingly without the need to stop and interrupt their workflow and their productivity and go back to base to collect more tasks or to collect more work, or the afternoon task sheet. The other thing that we did, and again I'm just going to remind you of some of the work that we did a moment ago. I'll just jump back to Service Desk. And what we also had is this empty properties example. Now that hasn't been the beneficiary of any automated workflow, so that's still sitting as open on the task on the central database. So how might I deal with that? If I'm the person that's responsible for empty properties in our housing stock for the council or for the commissioned outsourced partner or the social housing landlord, well, if I'm that and I'm looking for ad hoc requests, then I'll bring up my iPhone screen again and bring it back to the fore. There we are. Go back into the app. To do those sorts of capabilities, I've also got my mobile manager option. So if I'm a team leader, I might have access to what we call our mobile manager interface. And on that capability, if I drop into that screen, just wait for it to refresh on screen, there's various things that I can do. So I might choose to go and check for any unassigned work. So I go into the filter screen, I select service requests, and I want to look at them from report it, and I'm interested particularly in anything that is an empty property. So if I can find that, I'll select empty properties, the category that I'm interested in, click on done, I want anything that hasn't yet been allocated, and I'm going to say search the database. I need to give it some dates. That's a user error on my part. So from today through to tomorrow, let's say, and let's search for anything that's not yet allocated to one of my team. And what it will do then is go and knock on the virtual door of the database, do a secure handshake with it, identify the user that's making that request, and in that regard what it's then doing is saying, okay, you've asked for any service requests that are in the category empty properties that haven't yet been allocated to a mobile worker. And what it's done is to return that empty properties example that we were talking about a moment ago, or that we created a moment ago. If I tap on that, there's a number of different things I can do. I can get directions to that and see exactly where it is. So it'll give me a drive time from where I am to where that location is. So it's a rather fast 2 hours and 18 minutes for me to get there. If I go back to it, I might choose actually to say that I want to allocate that to somebody. And what it will do is it will list all of the potential people that are closest to it first. So you'll see I've got one of my colleagues, John Paul, which is a pseudonym for one of my colleagues, who's only 11 kilometres away from that. Our office is in 4th Street in London. But there I am at 135 kilometres away from it. So if I want to allocate it to myself, which I realise is rather circular, but for the purposes of the example, I can tap on that, click on allocate, and it will auto-allocate it to me. All of those criteria, distance away from the incident, number of tasks on the task sheet, all of those can be built into automated rules. So I've allocated it back out to myself, so that then disappears from the unallocated service request environment. And if I then go back to the home screen and go to mobile worker again and refresh that screen, what we should see is that that service request then drops on to my mobile worker assigned sheet. And there you see it. We've got the empty properties at the ground floor flat at Marlborough Road is now assigned to me. So we've done a complete digital cycle, end-to-end digital process from the customer raising that service request all the way through to that being automatically assigned in the example of the fly tip and then manually assigned by a mobile manager, a mobile team leader or supervisor who's out in the borough working from a tablet or smartphone device with the mobile manager app available to them. So we've been able to manage the entire process from one end to the other. There are a couple of things that I'd also like to share with you if I can. So I mentioned this kind of the duty of care aspect around a particular worker. So if I drop into lone worker, what I can actually do is go in and set up a check-in for a lone worker. So if I'm about to disappear into a property, bear with me, that I think I may be at risk at in terms of someone in there that's potentially aggressive, or I'm just not sure of the environment, and I want to set an alert to tell my colleagues if I don't re-emerge in 10 or 15 minutes to take some sort of action, then I can say set up a lone worker, and we'll set up an alarm for today at so it's 2 o'clock. Done. Remind me, yes. Notify by a call. We could ask for a message to be sent, click on done, and that then automatically starts to count down over the next 10 minutes of whether I check in or not. So that's then setting up a self-organized lone worker alarm call. So if I don't re-emerge in 10 minutes, then it will notify my supervisor or whoever else is on that chain of command that I want to be made aware of my whereabouts or my lack of emergence or ability to check in. So there's a lone worker capability sitting on that. That lone worker capability is connected then to a workforce management console in the back office. So I'm going to take in a slightly different direction at this point. So if I click on my workforce option, I've got various interfaces that are open to me through the workforce dashboard. If we just complete that kind of lone worker scenario, first of all, if I go into monitor, what you'll see is that me as a worker here on the 9th of Feb, I've got a check-in time at 1400, and that is active now on the console. So whoever's sitting back in a control room or a central administration function for this particular group of workers can keep an eye on what's going on in terms of their mobile workers, their history. I can make a call directly to their device. I can check them in automatically. If they call in and say, can you extend me, I can extend them. So that, and I can also view their journey in terms of their recent movement. So I've got an ability to monitor the whereabouts from the duty of care perspective of all of my workers and folks that are registered. couple of other bits and pieces on there. If I just jump back to visibility, I can see all of my registered mobile workers on a map. So if I click here, for example, you'll see that that's where I'm located today, and I was just checked in 84 seconds ago. So I know where my workers are at any given point in time, and I can also see how they've been moving around the locale at any given point in time. So I go on to Journey, I can select a particular user, so I'll search for me, and I'll then select the appropriate devices. So there's a couple of devices listed here for me. I'll get both of them, so I'm not sure which one is actually active. And I'll just push it back a day as well, so we'll go back all the way to midnight on the 8th on Wednesday, and then we'll go and search for Bernie. And what that returns is a couple of things. You can see that Journey A, which was actually on the 8th of Feb at 06:59. Now yesterday I had the benefit of catching quite an early train from my local station all the way into a couple of meetings in London, and it's actually tracked my journey all the way through there. So I can see exactly what I was up to yesterday. Now it only started tracking me at a particular time, so just in terms of data protection and human rights legislation, all of the configuration around tracking of users can be organised to reflect shift patterns, so you only track users when they're actually on shift, and you don't track them when they're off shift, so all of those sorts of things can be governed and controlled for. And if I zoom in a little bit further up the map, you can see that I've got some movements from today. So I've been working from home today, and my only journey today was to a very short drive into the next village to pick up a paper, just so that I had something to show you in terms of movements for today. So you can see that it's tracking at quite a detailed level, my actions and activities, but only doing that within a specified time frame. So we've covered quite a lot in that process. We've covered the ability to raise service requests as a council officer, and or to pick up service requests that are raised by customers in a self-service context. We've looked at the ability to automate the workflow to assign those out to an appropriate worker using the automated rules and workflow capabilities of the platform. And we've also looked at the ability of a remote supervisor or manager to assign work out on the hoof, as it were, in an ad hoc way, and how that can be picked up by a mobile worker, and they can work with that online and offline and update that data. And then in the last 5 or 10 minutes, we've just spent a little bit of time looking at some of the lone worker capability and some of the workforce tracking and workforce management capability. In the last minute or two, I'm just going to point you in the direction of the administration screens, and it's the administration screens that typically a smaller number of users within a council that are using My Council Services would have access to, because this is where you do all the setup. So that's all the form design, all the form deployment. Forms can be integral to a task, so if you assign a task to someone you want to capture some data as part of that process, you can assign a task form and design that task form. You can share forms between different authorities. There's a whole range of different configuration setup options that are available to you. Way too many functions really for me to kind of dip into at this stage in this kind of introductory session. So just to kind of tie things up and to tie up loose ends, I'll jump back to the slides and we'll just finish off for the last 30 seconds or so before I'll let you get on with the rest of your Thursday afternoon with a few tips to get started. The idea really with My Council Services is that you can implement it in any way that you like, and you can configure it in any way that you like, but the key really is that you can do that incrementally. So you can start in quite a small way, just automate 1 or 2 processes across the council for mobile working or whatever it might be, and in doing so demonstrate some early tactical wins, knowing that the platform has much broader and deeper capability to meet your long-term strategic goals. I've also talked earlier in the session about the technologically open stance, in that we're very open to and keen to make it as easy and as financially sustainable as possible to offer integration into third-party applications, so that we can do a secure data exchange and automate workflow across and between different applications that you might be using in the authority. And I suppose the final point that we make is that the technology is really only part of the solution. That might be slightly counterintuitive for a technology vendor to say that, but in the kind of maelstrom of all of the challenges that local authorities are having to deal with, not least of which are those financial challenges and changes to working patterns and approaches, yes, technology is part of the answer, but it's also important to make sure that your organisational culture and structure is shifting to reflect those new challenges and those new ways of working. If you just take historical processes and roll them over onto a digital platform, you do damage your chances of that being a successful rollout. So I suppose the message there really from our perspective, and based on our experience, we've got over 50 UK local authorities working with us now, to do the range of mobile working and customer self-service and CRM and so on, is that you should use the opportunities that the transformation presents to simplify and redesign processes internally that lend themselves towards automation from a technical point of view without diluting the quality of the service for the customer, and that's eminently achievable. So just to recap on things before we wrap up for this session, and the slides will be available for download as soon as you've had a chance to do that. We've got one more webinar that we're running today after this one. A recording of this session will be available, and do feel free to contact either Rachel or I with questions. Our telephone number, our generic email address and our Twitter handle are all on screen at the moment. We will be distributing these slides, but at that point it just remains for me to say thank you very much for attending, thank you for your time and attention, and I wish you a productive remainder of your Thursday afternoon. Thanks folks, bye bye.